Okay, so have you glanced at the business headlines lately? Because if you have, you've probably seen this, frankly, terrifying narrative taking hold. We're in the middle of a massive wave of tech layoffs across 2025 and 2026, and according to the corporate press releases, AI is the culprit. We're being told that AI is, finally here to take our jobs. But is that actually true? Today, we're going to look at the hard data to find out if AI is genuinely driving this unemployment wave or if something else entirely is going on behind the scenes.
Well, to answer that, we just need to look at what's right here on the screen. This isn't from some random skeptic. This is a direct quote from Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, the very company that kicked off this whole generative AI boom in the first place. Speaking at a recent summit, he openly admitted that companies are engaging in what he calls AI washing. Essentially, they're using artificial intelligence as a convenient futuristic excuse to mask layoffs that they were already planning to execute for entirely different reasons.
And honestly, the media has completely fallen for it hook, line, and sinker. Just look at this staggering number, 1,100%. According to tracking data from Challenger Gray and Christmas, the number of layoffs attributed to AI surged by 1,100% recently. But here is the catch, and it's a big one. That firm gets its data purely by reading corporate press releases. They're just tallying up what companies voluntarily claim in public. There's absolutely no independent verification, no audits, and zero penalties for a company stretching the truth in a PR statement.
But hold on a second. Contrast that massive surge with this number right here, 0. That's right, a big fat 0. In New York, the WARN Act actually requires companies conducting mass layoffs to file legally binding documents explaining exactly why they're letting people go. New York even added a specific checkbox for AI and automation. Out of 162 companies that filed notices covering over 28,000 workers, many of whom, by the way, blamed AI in public, exactly 0 checked that box. When faced with actual legal penalties for lying, every single one cited standard economic reasons instead. Wild, right?
So, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're basically putting on our detective hats. We're going to dig into the source material to separate legitimate, technology-driven restructuring from clever corporate PR spin. By the end of our time together, you'll have a practical toolkit to detect corporate AI washing in the wild.
All right, here's our roadmap. We'll cover the AI layoff illusion, dive into the motives behind AI washing, give you a 2-signal test to spot it, look at some real-world case studies, and finish up with the actual reality of AI work. Let's get right into it.
Kicking things off with part 1, the AI layoff illusion.
So what are the actual economists saying behind the scenes? Well, Oxford Economics bypassed all those flashy press releases and looked at actual employers' survey data. And what they found is that AI accounts for a mere 4.5% of total job cuts. That means the vast majority of these layoffs are driven by normal, cyclical market conditions, weak demand, and a massive reversal of the overhiring spree we saw during the pandemic. In fact, if AI were truly replacing workers at scale, we'd see labor productivity accelerating. But instead, Oxford Economics notes that productivity growth is actually decelerated.
Which brings us to part 2, motives behind AI washing.
Think about it. If AI isn't the real reason, why on earth would a CEO go on record and basically lie, or at least heavily distort the truth about it? The sources point to 3 huge incentives for this kind of corporate deception. First up, narrative control. Telling Wall Street, hey, we missed our earnings and an activist investor is forcing us to cut costs, makes a CEO look weak. But saying, we're streamlining because AI makes us highly efficient, that makes them look like a visionary. Second is talent positioning. When these companies inevitably start hiring again, framing themselves as an AI-forward tech adapter attracts top engineering talent way better than looking like a struggling legacy brand. And finally, regulatory hedging. Blaming the broad, vague, macroeconomic force of AI for layoffs actually helps them avoid the strict legal red tape that comes with admitting they use an automated AI tool to make specific employment decisions.
Moving right along to part 3, the 2-signal detection test. Okay, so now that we know why they do it, how do we actually catch them in the act? Let's break down our diagnostic toolkit, starting with the first signal, role alignment. If a CEO says they're firing people because AI code generation is doing the heavy lifting, you need to look closely at the actual list of fired roles. AI has demonstrably absorbed work in areas like basic coding, content moderation, and structured QA. But if a company claims AI is taking jobs, yet they proceed to fire product managers, strategic partnership leads, and marketing directors, roles that require complex, nuanced human judgment, well, the AI rationale completely falls apart. The narrative just doesn't match the operational reality.
And that brings us to the second signal, preceding financial events. Look, massive layoffs rarely just come out of nowhere. You have to look at what happened in the 2 to 6 weeks prior to the announcement. Did the company just miss an earnings target? Did an activist investor send a highly publicized letter demanding a specific dollar amount in cost cuts? I mean, if an activist demands exactly $500 million in cuts, and then 2 weeks later the CEO announces a $500 million quote-unquote AI-driven layoff, you have successfully detected AI washing.
Let's put this into practice with part 4, real-world case studies.
Let's see how this scorecard plays out when we apply our two-signal test to some actual 2026 tech layoffs. Take Snap, for example. They announced massive AI-driven cuts, but they fired product and partnership people, not engineers. Plus, an activist investor had just demanded exactly $500 million in cuts just days prior. They completely failed both signals, pure AI washing. Now, Oracle was a bit of a mixed bag. Some operational roles were cut, but mostly sales, while under heavy public margin pressure. We'd call that partial AI washing. Block, on the other hand, cut operational roles without a preceding financial demand. They passed the test, representing a much rarer, more honest AI restructuring.
Now, here's a truly fascinating insight from our sources. Regardless of those fancy press releases, the labor market, it already knows the truth. Supply and demand data in the hiring world strips away all that PR fluff and reveals exactly what these companies are actually doing on the ground. Just look at the talent supply data following Snap's layoffs. It is incredibly revealing. The roles they cut, like strategic partnerships, had a massive oversupply in the market. We're talking 80 candidates for every single open job. Regular product managers were sitting at 40 to 1, but specialized AI product managers, they were highly in demand at only 8 to 1. This absolutely proves that companies are simply using the AI narrative as a retroactive excuse to trim the fat in roles that the market had already massively oversupplied, all while they desperately hold on to true AI talent.
Finally, let's wrap things up with part 5, the reality of AI work.
So if AI isn't causing this wave of mass unemployment, what is it actually doing all day? Well, this scatterplot from the Yale Budget Lab is a real eye-opener. It plots OpenAI's claims of theoretical job exposure against the actual real-world usage data from Anthropic, and it shows a massive gap. Just because a job is theoretically exposed to AI does not mean it's actually being automated. In fact, Yale's analysis of 33 months of government data shows literally no statistically significant shift in our occupational mix, meaning the fundamental makeup of jobs in our economy hasn't drastically changed since generative AI arrived on the scene.
And why is that? Well, the MIT Industrial Performance Center hit the nail on the head. Their research shows that AI is definitely not acting as a wholesale replacement for human beings. Instead, it's acting as an augmentation tool. Workers are transitioning into what they call human-in-the-loop supervisors. Think of it kind of like an airline pilot overseeing an autopilot system. Professionals are using AI to aggregate data, write first drafts, and spot anomalies. But human judgment, situational awareness, and final review, those are more critical now than ever before.
So let's just summarize the hard economic evidence we've seen. A major study by the National Bureau of Economic Research analyzed Danish administrative records, which basically track every hour and dollar in an entire economy, and they found precise null effects on earnings and hours from AI adoption, zero evidence of mass displacement. Furthermore, even at hardware giants like Dell and Amazon, where they are actively reorganizing teams, the goal isn't to replace their own staff with AI. Their internal restructuring is strictly about cost control so they can build enterprise AI servers and commercial tools to sell to other businesses. It's all about shifting capital, not deleting human labor.
Which brings us to our final question for you today. The next time you're scrolling and you see a terrifying headline about a massive tech company slashing jobs and blaming the artificial intelligence revolution, what will you do? Well, you now have the two-signal test. You know to look at the exact roles being cut, and you know to hunt for those hidden financial motives. You have the tools to separate media hype from economic reality. Make sure you use them.